something else that I want to address. And since it happened in class, in front of the whole class, we're going to address it in front of the whole class and use it as a learning experience for everyone. So there are two terms that would be helpful for you to know in your life. One is negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement. Your parents use this, and you will be using this as a parent or in any kind of authority because it is the two separate ways that you motivate someone to do something. So for example, negative reinforcement is when something negative happens because of something someone else did to motivate them to not do the negative thing in the future. So for example, starting next week, if you have no name on your paper, it gets no points and it will get thrown away if you don't come get it the next week. So that is negative enforcement, and the idea is that because there's a negative consequence, you will remember to write your name on your paper. Simple enough. Positive reinforcement is when you do something and you get positive reinforcement that motivates you to continue doing something good or to do even better. So for example, an example of positive reinforcement is when your parents just tell you, good job, that was great, I'm so proud of you, all those good things. Or when you get a good grade because you studied, that's nice. Or when you have 500 points or more and you get a little thing of cookies that you get to eat in class. Oh, can you pass them out for me? I've got all the 500 or mores underlined. And so that's positive reinforcement, and that motivates you to do the positive thing in the future. So prior to this, we had a negative reinforcement. If you didn't bring your folder, you're going to have to sing happy birthday. And those who were going to have to sing happy birthday actually did. That brings up a point. What do you do when someone wants you or asks you or pushes you to do something that you are uncomfortable doing? How do you deal with that in a proper and correct way? Well, it starts out, there are two questions. The first question is that person, is that person in authority over me or not? If they are not, say they are your friends or your classmates or people who are around your age or some random little kid who just walks up to you, if they are not in authority over you, that changes everything. You are not responsible to do what they want you to do. But however, it's a good idea to be polite and all that stuff. So what do? Say there's a peer pressure situation. You're at the lake and you have your dog, and your dog's scared of water and he doesn't know how to swim. And they're all like, come get in the lake and let's throw your dog in. You're like, you losers, don't say that. You can start out the first time by saying something positive. Just be like, oh, no, I'd rather not. He's afraid of the water. You guys go ahead. Well, what if they come back again? The otters. Oh, it'll be fun. No, really, it'll be fun. It'll work out just fine. Well, the second time, try again. No, really, it's okay. You guys go ahead. I'll take pictures, whatever. You can say something mostly friendly, but you don't have to say yes. What if they keep coming back? The lions, they're like, if you don't do this, you're not my friend, kind of thing. Think of it as 3 strikes, you're out. If somebody's asking, they're probably just asking. The second time, maybe they really think you're just being shy or something. But by the third time, that's pressuring and it's trying to push you or manipulate you to do something, and that's not right. So by the third time, think of it as striking out, and then you don't have to keep being like super polite stuff. Just be like, no. That's it. If they're pressuring you to do something that's genuinely wrong, there's no question. You can just say no. And if they keep pressuring you, then tell them why. Because I believe the Bible, and the Bible says this is wrong. Period. You don't have to be embarrassed about that. In fact, your level of confidence decides where the conversation is and who's in charge of the conversation. Pushy people who are used to bullying other people, like to be in charge, and so they use a lot of tactics to push you. If you maintain confidence and calmness, you stay in charge of the conversation. So if it's 3 strikes, you're out. Now, what if it is a person of authority? For example, your teacher, or your parents, or your pastor, and they're asking you to do something, and you're genuinely uncomfortable with it because you're the personality type who doesn't want to do this or whatever. So at the time, if it's, say, in a classroom setting, you can raise your hand, and when the teacher addresses you, you can say something respectful like, could I do something different? If there's an opportunity and it's not right in that second in front of everybody else, a good idea is to follow the biblical model of addressing something that's wrong. Now, it's not usually a sin aspect, but the same principles are good to apply. The Bible talks about if somebody's done something, you go to them in private and you tell them what they did. And that's a good thing to do with your authority as well. You can come to them in private after class and say, that made me really uncomfortable. Would it be okay to do something different? Or something like that, as long as you were respectful. You can address it, and very often they will change. Sometimes it's just a personality difference, and they haven't really thought about it. Because to them, maybe it would be fun. And so they can change it. So for example, based on last week, I'm changing instead of negative reinforcement, you will just get positive reinforcement since it's a casual class. So at this point, everybody who brought their folders last week gets an extra 50 points, and everybody who brought their folders this week. From here on out, if you bring your folders and pen, you're going to get 50 points. So there's that. But in the future, if an authority figure asks you to do something, it is not appropriate to ignore them, and it's not appropriate to say no. Understood? Great. Now, what if it's your parents and there's something that very often a personality difference? Again, say your mom's an otter, and she comes and tells you, I've got this great idea. When I was in high school, I was in a marching band, and I think you'd have fun too. That'd be so much fun. You'll love it. You're going to be in the marching band. And maybe to you, that's the most horrifying thing you can imagine, because everybody's going to stare at you, and you have to wear a uniform, and you're allergic to grass, and you hate football. So, everything about this is just like, ah! Okay, what you don't do, disrespect and sarcasm. For one, that's a sin, and then you need to apologize for it. But for another, it's not going to get you what you want. Most parents don't respond well to this, and that is going to only make things worse. So say they want you to do something. The two things to think about if your authority figure wants you to do something that you're really uncomfortable with, pray about it first. That's always a great place to start. But here's the two things: respect and timing. So when you do approach them, do so with respect. I was wondering if we could talk. Do you have a minute to talk? There's something I wanted to ask you about. Would it be okay if, something, and explain why? If you're a detailed person, you can write out a paper, seriously, with bullet points that explain, this is the reason, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was wondering if there was something else I could do, or if we could just not do this. Maybe they want you to go to some party because they think it'd be good for you to make more friends, but you know that at that personal place, they're going to be pressuring you to do something that's wrong. You should tell your parents about that, but maybe not right that second. That's where timing matters. If your mom is putting away groceries and the baby's crying and she's got to get dinner ready for 30 minutes, it's not the time to talk about something you'd like to change about your future. She's just going to be like, talk to me later. Or she might forget, and now you're stuck, and what do? Or when your dad first comes home from work, he really just wants to relax, and you'll be like, I just really want to tell you that I don't agree with your policy on this. No, that's not a good idea. Even for husbands and wives, this is important. It's a good idea to care about the timing. So as odd as it sounds, you can make an appointment with your parents or the person in authority. So you can say something like, would it be okay if, could I have 10 minutes, I want to talk to you about something. Would tomorrow afternoon be a good time? It works in a company too, same thing. So complaining to other people about it doesn't get what you want. Complaining straight to that person usually doesn't get what you want. But addressing them with respect and good timing very often will change things for the better. Got it? Okay, so that was a little extra today. Now we are moving on to personalities, which I just love so much. But first I gotta find out who brought their folders so that we can do positive reinforcement. Now the points are getting really, really big, and from this point on, there's going to be some very large things that you can do to get points. So today, there's an option of writing a paper about personalities, but then there's an option of adding points for this and adding points for this, and if you do everything, you can get 800 points this week. Next week, there will actually even be a book you can read if you want to, and on personalities, that's one of my favorite. I actually really love it. But first, let's go through. I'm going to call your name. If you brought your folder and pen, say yes. If you didn't, just say no. And if you want to be dramatic about it, you can be like, I'm so sorry. Okay, that'd be great. Laura.
Yes.
Ava's not here. Bree.
Yes.
Tessa.
Yes.
Tate.
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes.
Joshua.
Yes.
Jordan's not here. Andrew.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Grace. Where'd Grace go? She's around here somewhere. Cannon.
Yes.
Laurel.
Yes.
Emma's not here. Soul is not here either. Hope.
Yes.
Will.
Yes.
Oh, good job. Violet.
Yes.
Good job. Hallie.
Yes.
Meadow. Oh, Meadow. Well, I'll sing a sad song for you. All right, now, the next thing that you get points for every single week for the rest of the semester is if you wore or brought a wetsuit. Something that draws attention and is a conversation starter, like whatever Will had on his nose when he came in. That's a wetsuit. That's good. Not sure why you did it. We can talk about that later. All right, so let's start through. I'm going to go through the same names. Tell me if you brought a wetsuit. Laura?
Yes.
Bree?
Yes.
Tessa?
Yes.
Tate?
Yes.
Rachel?
No.
Joshua?
Yes.
Some of you, if you're the super confident kind, can be like, I am what? Andrew? want to ask you what all your what's its are and what they mean and all that kind of stuff. But we don't have points. You got a what's it, Grace?
Yes.
I like the shirt.
Thanks.
Did you bring your folder?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I forgot you have class first, and so you'll be right. Oh, what is your highest score? If you are a retriever, you go here. If you're a beaver, you go here. Oh, I did it again. Retrievers, beavers, otters, lions. They went extinct. Okay, let's dig in. All right, here's what I need from you, Miss Hope.
Yes.
I get 4 minutes per personality type.
Okay.
I would like to spend about 30. So we're gonna have to whip through this, but go a little deeper so that you can learn more. So for starters, ignore the weaknesses right now. And did you pass out all the new papers?
Yes.
You can also look on here and look on the positives. Don't look on the weaknesses right now, because we'll get to those later. So for starters, we're looking at the lions. Lions are ambitious. They're the ones who like to make the plan and be in charge of the plan. They tend to be very efficient. They want to get things done. That's important to them. They are very often the leaders, and they are very often confident in the things that they think, in the things that they decide. And so sometimes they can be a little bit pushy about the things that they want, because they're pretty sure that they made the right decision, they've got the right plan, and this is the best way to get things done. So when you're watching a war movie, and there are two generals, and they're like, we're going to win the war if we do this, the other one's like, no, we're going to win the war if we do this, and they get really mad at each other, that's two lions. The reason they're generals is because they're lions, and they make good decisions, and they often make decisions very quickly. So if you notice somebody who's like, here's this problem, this is what we need to do about it, boom, 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 they're usually a lion. All right, they are often motivators. They're the ones who are like, if we're going to win this war, we got to get this done, let's go. And they're the ones who are the pep rallies, the ones who make speeches before the football game and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you notice, your average football coach, who is a good leader, good quick decision maker, because they've only got like 5 seconds to decide this whole thing that makes a difference with the game, but you notice sometimes they often have quick tempers to go with them. So something happens, there's a foul, and they don't think that it's right. They start screaming and yelling. I don't know if you noticed, but there are some coaches who somebody's entire job is to hang on to their shirt so they don't walk out onto the field and get in trouble. I think that would be the best job. That would be hilarious. All right, so some of their weaknesses come along with their strengths. And as I mentioned before, yes, Grace?
I don't have papers.
I don't have one. Help, Grace. Thank you. You can just keep those in case somebody else needs them. Forgot what I was talking about. Every single type has strengths, but every kind of strengths come with weaknesses. So for example, if you make quick decisions and you aren't doing it with God's help, you might start to trust in your quick decisions a little too much, and then you get a little arrogant, and then you start pushing everybody else when you shouldn't. So you see how it's the strength can become a weakness if you don't let God have it. So being a good motivator is great as long as you're motivating people in the right direction. A lot of the great dictators and evil people in the world have been lions. That's the reason we know about them, because when they did something bad, they brought a couple million people with them. The otters. This is so adorable. The otters are the friendly ones and the fun ones, and if anybody comes to you and is like, let's do this, it'll be fun, you can almost guarantee otter is high on their list. The otters are sociable, they're outgoing, they're the talkers. They tend to be very optimistic. Everything will work out, don't worry about it. Now, if you're a beaver, you're like, what about the details? What's going on here? What about this problem that might come up? And they're like, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. You're like, I'm going to have a seizure. Otters are moving quickly. They also make quick decisions, and they tend to trust in their instincts, not in the fact that they're like, I know what's going on. They're just more like, I have this feeling, let's just go with it. It'll be great. And often they're right. They tend to be confident, and they're fun-loving, and they're just fun people to be around. And they often are the life of the party. If you have a party and all you have are beavers and retrievers, it's going to be a quiet party. Because most of you are not going to take charge, and you're not going to be like, let me tell you all a story. It's just not in your nature, and so you need some otters and some lions in the mix just to mix things up. But if the whole world was full of otters and lions, it would be very loud, and we would have some serious conflicts with authority. The problem with otters, because they're quick decision makers and because they run on impulse, sometimes they're wrong. And the problem is they often don't know when they're wrong because they've already moved on and they've jumped into it. They tend to hate details, and I'm not being critical They don't want to get bogged down. Don't bog me down with the instructions. Just tell me exactly what I need to know so I can move on and go. Have fun. It'll be great. I hate new technology because I have to learn really tiny, minute stuff and then I have to remember it. I'm going to be like, somebody show me how it's done. So, for example, being in a play is super fun for otters as long as they don't have to learn too many lines. They tend to be very forgiving. They're very relational. They love people, and they want to look at the best in people. So if somebody's like, there's good in everybody and all that, that's typically an otter. Then we go on to our golden retrievers. They are also the sweet group. So this is our sweet group and our relational group and our people group and our loving group. So the golden retrievers balance out everybody else because they are the calm ones. They're the chill ones. They're not getting worked up because somebody didn't agree with their plan, or they're not getting upset because the fun thing didn't happen, and so now we're in the depths of despair. Anne of Green Gables. Yeah. Otter. Diana Barry, retriever. The one who's the sidekick to the one who's going off and having all these weird adventures, and it's your job to be like, maybe that's not a good idea. They're very diplomatic. They tend to be peacemakers. They want to make sure everybody has good relationships with everybody else. And so they're willing to often step back or give in what they want so that someone else can be happy. They're very accepting, and they're very rational. It's kind of like, we don't need to get freaked out about this. This is not that big of a deal. Let's all just be calm, and let's think about it, and let's make a very slow plan, but we're going to make a good plan that makes everybody happy and everything work out. The problem with them, as I mentioned before, is that sometimes you're so accepting and adapting that you give in when you shouldn't. And so just to make other people happy, you are setting aside things that are really important to you, or even things that are right and wrong. It's really tough to not give in to peer pressure when you're a retriever, because you want people to be happy with you, and that's your big motivation. There's also being passive sometimes, or unambitious. There's things that needs to get done, and you're just kind of like, okay. And the beaver. Beavers are interesting. They're very detail-oriented. They're very rational and logical. So they're kind of like, this guy comes up with a plan. They're like, okay, what are the bullet points? What are the actual things we're going to do? What are the details? He's like, who cares about details? Let's just go. Whereas the otter comes up with a plan. It'll be fun. And the beavers are kind of like, yeah, but what if it rains? Doesn't matter. It'll work out. It'll be fine. It'll be fun. And like, yeah, but we need to bring this, and this in case it rains. And it's good to have a beaver around. You want beavers around when you're trying to make a plan. So, for example, the play last year. We needed one of each kind in leadership, at least, because if you only have this one, they're going to get it done, but what about all the people that they sort of steamrolled over? You know, what are you doing? Where is this happening? Why isn't it happening yet? Et cetera, et cetera. You need an otter who's like, oh, here's the little kid who's crying. We need to stop everything and see what's going on with them, make sure they're okay. We need to make sure everybody's having fun. We need to make sure the costumes look really cool. Then we got our golden retrievers who are kind of like, what do you need? I'll help out. I'll fill in the gaps. And that's just such a blessing. And then you have your beavers who are like, if we keep at the trajectory we're going with the memorization and the practice, we're going to need about 7 more weeks before we're ready to go. And that's very useful information. If we're just having fun, it's time to do the play, and we only have 5 minutes. And I'm saying that because we actually know someone who did something like that, and the play was fine. Nobody really practiced, and nobody was really ready, but they were like, it'll just work out, and it didn't. So your beavers, they are creative, but in certain ways. So a lot of your autistic people are beavers. They're hard to focus on other things, but they're geniuses about these little details. Or your math people who like numbers, people who like details, Rubik's Cube champion. Now, this is a marriage conference, and he's talking about marriages, and he keeps mentioning your spouse. But it applies to your siblings. It applies to your friends. It applies to your parents and the way you communicate with other people. You are going to be communicating with people all your life. And what he says makes a very, very good point. If you move to Kenya, it'd be good to learn Swahili so you can communicate. And even nonverbals, there are different languages, different countries, different cultures. Your nonverbal in one country could mean the exact opposite in another country, like in one of the places I live. You don't want to do this. In other places, well, I was just going to do it, but it's actually, there's a hand signal that we use all the time in America that's actually a cuss word in another country. So you need to learn what things mean to other people. So like he was saying, if you want to motivate an otter, say it'll be fun. If you want to motivate a lion, we'll get a lot done. And it's true. You want to motivate me, those two things are what are going to work. If you're like, this will be the right way to do it, it's like deflating a balloon. It's a good idea to understand where other people are coming from. Now, one thing that's interesting, as I mentioned, you're usually too high and too low. So here's what I want to know. Those of you who are sitting here, you don't all fit really in the same category because you're so vastly different based on what your other three things are. It all mixes together. It's kind of like flour. If you mix flour with certain things, you got biscuits. If you mix flour with other things, you got cake. Slap it on your face, it's gonna hurt your eyes. I don't know, but there are all kinds of different things depending on what you mix them with. So I just asked whose second thing was lion, and a few of you were, and it clicks like, oh, that makes so much sense. Those are my two. I'm married to a guy who is these two, and so we have to learn to speak each other's language, or we're always going to be frustrated with each other, or at least confused. So whose second is an otter? Now all of you otters, take a look. Anybody? Not really sure.
I was one half beaver and one half golden retriever, and they were at the same scores, and the same scores for otter and same scores for otter.
Yes, it's tough when you get a tie because then you don't really know. And that's why we're going to keep studying this for several weeks, because one thing I want to point out to you is, okay, remember the word future. Whose second is a retriever? Interesting. Oh, no. If you're a lion, see, that's an otter thing to do. Oh, I didn't interrupt it. If you're a lion, you don't usually have a lot of retriever in you. But beavers often have a lot of retrievers, and retrievers often have a lot of beavers. Same thing over here. These two kind of tend to go together. How many of you had beaver as a second? Take a look. And sometimes you're a rare mix, which be proud of it. Like, I'm a rare breed. So that affects who you are and what you want and what matters to you, and also the best way to communicate with each other. So we're going to continue on. Oh, future. Thank you for remembering. One thing to remember, don't get completely hung up on that little test you took. I mean, that was just like dinky. You're going to change over time, and you might learn more about yourself. One of the things about right now is who you are is deeply affected by your family culture and your family dynamics. So oftentimes the balancers, so say for example there's one lion in your family, and sometimes all the younger siblings just sort of go into these other characteristics because there's already a lion. So somebody's already in charge. And maybe they're a lion too, and they aren't going to realize it until they're 25. I remember I used to be like, of all the things I am, I'm absolutely not a lion. Not a lion, not a lion, not a lion. Because to me, lions lost their temper and they boss people around. And I was like, that's not me. I really care about people, and I like people, and all that kind of stuff. And then as I got older and went out on my own, went to college, started making my own friendships and all that kind of stuff, and you learn more about yourself and what you're effective at and what matters to you, and some of these things, like what motivates you, you'll learn more about yourself. So if you discover next week that you're a little bit different than you thought, or if you discover in 5 years that you're a little bit different than you thought, that's fine. This is just a tool to help you, and if you have a wrench and you discover down the road it's better used for this than it is for this, great. So for right now, it's just meant to be helpful, and later it will be helpful. But in the meantime, you'll learn to understand yourself and understand others, and that's useful in pretty much all of the communication that you do throughout your life. Thinking about the people in your world, specifically the people you kind of tend to watch, your parents, your siblings. So your parents, for example, it's pretty easy to tell once you start really understanding this. So for example, if your mom is a fun printue person and it's time to cook dinner, she's probably going to be like, let's try this. Let's throw these things in a pot and see what happens. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And if she happens to have a daughter who is a beaver, they can't cook together because the beaver wants the exact recipe and exactly what to do and to know how to exactly make it right. And the fun person doesn't really want to help the beaver because it's not enjoyable. I hate recipes. They're tedious and they have lots of instructions. However, her stuff is going to taste better than my stuff. So sometimes we need each other. Maybe she can be making one thing while I'm throwing things in a pot, and if mine is totally disgusting, we'll eat hers. That'll work. All right. If you've got a parent when you go on vacation, okay, maybe you can think about yourself and you can think about everybody else in your family. When you go on vacation, it's time to plan what we're going to do when we get there. You've got your people who are like, let's fill it with as many things as possible, because that's what vacation means. Let's do fun stuff, or let's relax as much as possible, which means let's do as little as possible. Interestingly, those two often marry each other, and then they have trouble planning vacations for the rest of their lives, and you have to learn how to talk to each other and how to work things out. When he talked about like just relaxing and doing nothing, my insides are like, I hate boredom. I hate boredom. Like, I will push myself until I'm totally exhausted, and then I'm like, I really need to relax, and I relax, and I'm like, let's write a book, you know. But my husband, that's one of his favorite places to go. If he wants to relax, he just wants to relax so much that he's actually bored, and then he is renewed, and he has the energy to move on with life. So we've had to learn how to deal with weekends and vacations and things, because what we want and what fills us up is different. And all that brings up so many things. We got things to talk about next week, y'all. So, but for now, we're almost out of time, so I have to give you your easy peasy, and then we've got to talk about your little homework project. Thank you. Your easy peasy for this week. And by the way, next week you're turning in your easy peasies. So this is your last week for those numbers to count, or those easy peasy ones to count. So fill it out if you want extra points. Your easy peasy this week, 3 words: scoop, green beans. Scoop green beans. What does that mean? When you have an opportunity, okay, say you were at a church event, and I grew up, my grandpa was a pastor, I went to a lot of church events, and there's often we'd be at this church, and we didn't know most of the people. We were, coming from out of town, out of state, and so what am I supposed to do? I don't know these people. So my tendency was just to be as close to my mother as possible and sit with her. And there we go. Why don't you go make friends? No, because I'm terrified of strangers. Okay, so what do I do when I do actually want to be friendly with people, but I hate mingling? Any of you hate mingling? The idea of just wandering around and finding people to talk to? Otters usually don't. Lions sometimes don't, because they want to network and meet people and that sort of thing. But a lot of us, the idea of small talking, and we don't have a list of what we're supposed to talk about, or we don't have people we're supposed to talk to, it's really stressful. So what do? Scoop green beans. I learned this, and this has genuinely helped my life significantly. So at this point, when I go to an event, I'm like, hey, can I help somehow? And you find some place, like there would be often all these, things to serve. And I go behind the table and grab the spoon and be like, I'll scoop the green beans, or I'll get the ice, or I'll do the whatever. And if you're scooping the green beans, everybody in the place is coming through, and all you have to say is, green beans, hi, green beans, hi, green beans, hi, green beans, hi. And there's not enough time to actually talk, but you smile at people and you connect. I got to connect with everybody in the whole place, and they all have a positive feeling about me because we smiled at each other. And some of them even like, oh, how's it going? Oh, that's great. Want some more green beans? Here you go. But you got to move on to the next person, so you can't hang out for 20 minutes and get that awkward silence and whatever you're supposed to talk about. Talk about green beans. Want some more green beans? Okay. And it was successful. I got to talk to everybody, but I didn't have to mingle one single bit. Genius. Wonderful idea. I totally recommend it. So sometimes maybe it's, everybody's sitting down, so you can be like, I'll serve the drinks. So all you have to do is go up and be like, what do y'all want to drink? Hi. Again, everybody feels positive about you. Everybody is happy you came, but you didn't have to come up with anything to say. As opposed to, sometimes I've had people be like, why don't you just sit down and enjoy yourself? And I'm not going to explain it to them, but I want to be like, because then I feel uncomfortable. This gives me something to do where I'm interacting with people, but I'm not just trying to come up with something to say. So scoop the green beans. All right, grab your paper, flip it on the other side. All of you detail people, there is so much information here. It's so enjoyable. I actually really love all this information because it's useful. The lion in me thinks it's awesome because it will help me be more successful. The golden retrievers, this will help you have better relationships. Beavers, it will help you understand what's going on. Otters, it will help you be more friendly and have better communications with people. So this is worth reading, every single word. Most of us who are the quick decision makers, we want to skim it, just so you know. We should read every word. But at the bottom is your homework. And basically it's write me a 1.5 to 2 page paper of this situation. So the fire alarm goes off in the building. No one knows if it's a real fire or not. The kids are scared. What do we do? Some kids are panicking or crying or looking for their mothers. How could the personality that God gave you, your first, your second, the things that come to mind when I mention that situation, how could the personality God gave you help in situation? What could you do to help? And then pick one other person, anybody you know. Maybe it's somebody from history. I think that Trump could help the situation because he's a lion and he'll take charge. How could one other person's personality benefit along with yours to help this situation? And then there's a couple of extras if you want extra points, if you're an overachiever. You can include one person from each group. So how would the 4 groups all working together help fix this problem? And then if you want to add extra pages, all the way up to 5 pages, you can get more points and more points and more points. Yay! So depending on if you're a writer or not, or a communicator, or you like it, whatever. Now, next week, we are going to be spending some more time on the personalities